We've come a long way. You understand how your brain learns. You know the methods that work. You've seen the accelerators, the error-driven mindset, the automation strategies. You have the tools. But here's the final question. How do you keep this going? Not for a week, not for a month, but for years, for decades. How do fast learners stay fast? How do they keep improving when others plateau and stagnate? Because the truth is, most people start strong. They're excited, they're motivated, they make rapid progress in the beginning, but then they slow down, they settle, they stop evolving. But elite learners don't slow down. They keep accelerating. They keep getting better at getting better. And the reason isn't willpower. It's not talent, it's system. It's identity. It's the way they've structured their entire relationship with learning. This is long-term mastery. Not just learning one skill fast, but becoming the kind of person who learns everything fast, forever. Let's close the loop. Skill stacking compounds neural reuse. Every skill you learn changes your brain. It builds circuits, creates pathways, develops capabilities. And here's the remarkable part. Those circuits don't just serve one skill. They can be reused. When you learn your second language, it's easier than your first. Not because languages are similar, but because your brain already knows how to learn a language. The meta skill, the learning architecture, already exists. When you learn your third musical instrument, it's faster than your second. When you learn your fourth programming language, it's faster than your third. You're not starting from zero. You're reusing neural infrastructure. This is skill stacking. Each new skill builds on the foundation of previous skills. And the more you learn, the faster you learn. Not linearly, exponentially. Because you're not just adding skills, you're compounding neural reuse. Elite learners understand this. They don't just pursue one domain. They stack skills deliberately. They learn things that share underlying principles. And with each new skill, the learning process itself becomes faster, smoother, more efficient. So think in stacks. What you learn next should leverage what you learned before. Build on existing infrastructure. Reuse your circuits. Because skill stacking compounds neural reuse. And compounding is how you accelerate forever. Identity framing reallocates neural resources. Your brain allocates resources based on what it thinks you are. If you see yourself as not a math person, your brain doesn't invest heavily in mathematical processing. If you see yourself as not creative, your brain doesn't prioritize creative circuits. But when you shift your identity, when you decide, I am someone who learns quickly, your brain reallocates. It starts investing resources in learning itself. It prioritizes plasticity. It values adaptability. This is identity framing, and it's one of the most powerful levers for long-term mastery, because your identity determines what your brain thinks is worth developing. Elite learners don't identify with specific skills. They identify with learning. They see themselves as learners, as evolvers, as people who constantly grow and adapt, and that identity becomes self-fulfilling. Their brain organizes itself around that core definition. So how you frame yourself matters, not in a superficial affirmation in the mirror way, but in a deep, structural way. What story are you telling yourself about who you are? Because that story directs neural investment. If your story is, I'm a person who learns fast, your brain will build the architecture to make that true. Identity framing reallocates neural resources. Choose your identity carefully. It shapes your neurology. Narrative structure strengthens recall. Your brain doesn't remember isolated facts well, but it remembers stories brilliantly. Stories have structure, cause and effect, beginning, middle, end, characters, conflicts, resolutions, and that structure provides hooks, anchors, a framework for memory. When you organize information into narrative, when you turn facts into stories, recall becomes effortless. You're not trying to remember disconnected data points. You're remembering a sequence, a plot, a journey. This is why historical events are easier to remember than random dates. The dates exist within stories. This is why case studies are more memorable than abstract principles. The principles are embedded in narrative. You can use this deliberately. When learning anything, find the story. What's the narrative arc? What's the conflict? What's the resolution? Even in technical domains, there's always a story. The history of an idea, the problem it solved, the people who discovered it. Elite learners are master storytellers. They don't just accumulate information. They weave it into narratives. And those narratives make everything memorable, meaningful, connected. So ask yourself, what's the story here? How does this fit into a larger narrative? Make it personal if you can. Make yourself a character in the learning journey, because narrative structure strengthens recall, and recall is the foundation of usable knowledge. Abstraction accelerates future learning. The more you learn, the more you start to see patterns across domains, principles that apply everywhere, underlying structures that transcend specific subjects. This is abstraction, moving from concrete examples to general principles. And abstraction is what makes learning accelerate exponentially. When you learn physics, you learn about feedback loops. When you learn economics, you encounter feedback loops again. When you study ecology, there they are. Eventually, your brain abstracts. Feedback loops are a universal pattern. And once you have that abstraction, you recognize feedback loops instantly in any new domain. You don't have to learn the concept from scratch each time. This is why polymath learners are so fast. They've abstracted so many principles that almost nothing is truly new. They see the familiar structures underneath unfamiliar surfaces. You build abstraction by learning broadly, by studying multiple domains, by constantly asking, what's the general principle here? What's the pattern beneath the specifics? Can I apply this elsewhere? And as you abstract, learning accelerates. You're not learning individual facts anymore. You're learning transferable structures, and structures apply infinitely. Abstraction accelerates future learning. Build your library of abstract principles, and every new subject becomes easier, because nothing is entirely new. It's all variations on patterns you already know. Long-term vision stabilizes dopamine tone. Dopamine drives motivation, but dopamine is tricky. If your only rewards are short-term, dopamine spikes and crashes. You get excited, then you deflate. The motivation roller coaster. But when you have a long-term vision, when you're connected to a purpose that extends years into the future, dopamine stabilizes. It doesn't spike as high, but it doesn't crash either. It maintains a steady baseline, and that steady baseline sustains effort over time. This is why people with clear long-term goals persist when others quit. It's not willpower, it's neurochemistry. Their dopamine system is calibrated to the long game. Elite learners cultivate long-term vision. They know where they're going, not in detail but directionally. They have a North Star, and that vision provides meaning to daily effort. Each practice session isn't just about today, it's a step toward a future they can see. So build your vision. Where are you going? What are you becoming? Make it vivid. Make it compelling. Revisit it regularly, because long-term vision stabilizes dopamine tone, and stable dopamine is what carries you through the years when motivation would otherwise fade. Habituation kills learning. Newness restores it. Your brain stops paying attention to what's familiar. This is habituation. It's efficient for everyday life. You don't need to consciously process your morning routine, but it's deadly for learning. When practice becomes routine, when you're just going through the motions, your brain stops encoding. You're maintaining, not improving. The circuits stop changing because there's no novelty, no challenge, no prediction error. Elite learners understand this. They fight habituation constantly. They introduce novelty. They change the environment. They modify the practice. They set new challenges. They keep the brain off balance, alert, plastic. This is why they never do the same practice twice. They're always tweaking, always varying, always introducing some element of newness, because they know habituation kills learning, newness restores it. So audit your practice regularly. Has it become routine? Are you on autopilot? If yes, change something, anything. Disrupt the pattern, make it novel again. Because the moment practice becomes predictable, learning stops. Habituation kills learning. Newness restores it. Stay vigilant. Keep introducing novelty. Never let your practice become routine. Learning ecosystems beat isolated hacks. You've learned dozens of techniques throughout this journey, but here's the key. Isolated techniques have limited power. The real magic happens when you combine them, when you build an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a set of mutually reinforcing elements. Environment, habits, tools, routines, social support, identity, rewards, all aligned, all working together. One technique might give you a 5% improvement, but 10 techniques, properly integrated, don't give you 50%. They give you exponential gains because they reinforce each other. They create synergies. Elite learners don't just use hacks, they build ecosystems. They design their entire life around learning. Their environment supports it. Their habits automate it. Their social circle reinforces it. Their identity embodies it. And when everything is aligned, learning becomes inevitable. It's not something they have to force. It's just what happens, because the ecosystem produces it naturally. So think in systems. Don't just adopt one technique. Build an ecosystem. Align your environment, your habits, your identity, your social context. Make them all point in the same direction. Because learning ecosystems beat isolated hacks. Integration multiplies impact. The brain protects what it thinks it is. Your brain has a self-preservation instinct. It protects its current structure, its current identity. And when you try to change, when you try to learn something that conflicts with your self-image, your brain resists. This is why people say, "I'm just not good at this," and then stop trying. Their brain has decided, this isn't part of who I am, and it refuses to invest in developing it. But when your self-image is, "I am a learner," when your identity is built around growth and adaptation, your brain protects that instead. It protects your ability to learn. It preserves your plasticity. It defends your capacity to evolve. Elite learners have built their identity around learning itself, not around specific skills, but around the meta skill of acquiring skills, and their brain protects that. It invests in it. It prioritizes it. So the question becomes, what is your brain protecting? Is it protecting your current limitations, your fixed beliefs about what you can't do, or is it protecting your capacity to grow? Because the brain protects what it thinks it is, choose an identity that serves your growth. Make learner the core definition, and your brain will protect that. It will defend your ability to evolve, and that protection is what allows long-term mastery. Mastery is compression across domains. We've talked about compression within a single skill, but true mastery, the kind that defines elite learners, is compression across domains. It's seeing the same principle in music, mathematics, business, sports, and relationships. It's recognizing that feedback loops, leverage points, diminishing returns, and network effects are universal. It's building a small set of powerful mental models that apply everywhere. This is what separates good learners from great learners. Good learners master individual skills. Great learners master the patterns that connect all skills. And once you have those compressed, universal principles, learning anything new becomes pattern matching. You're not starting from scratch. You're recognizing a familiar structure in a new context. Elite learners are pattern hunters. They're constantly looking for the deep structure, the transferable insight, the principle that applies beyond the immediate domain, and they build a library of these compressed insights. And that library is their superpower, because with it, no subject is truly foreign. Everything is a variation on themes they already know. Mastery is compression across domains. Build your library of universal principles, see the patterns everywhere, and watch learning accelerate across your entire life. Fast learning is engineered, not gifted. Let's end where we began, with a truth that changes everything. You are not born a fast learner or a slow learner. Learning speed is not a fixed trait. It's not genetics. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's system, it's method, it's neurobiology properly applied. Every technique in this entire journey, every principle, every strategy, it's all based on how your brain actually works. Prediction error, attention, reward, spacing, interleaving, retrieval, deliberate practice, error-driven evolution, skill stacking, all of it is neuroscience. And neuroscience can be engineered. When you understand the machinery, you can optimize it. You can create the conditions where learning happens fast. You can build the habits that make practice automatic. You can design the environment that supports plasticity. You can become the person who learns quickly because you've engineered the system that produces fast learning. Elite learners aren't special. They're strategic. They've figured out how their brain works, and they've built their life around those principles. And now you have the same knowledge, the same tools, the same blueprint. The only question left is, what will you do with it? Because fast learning is engineered, not gifted. You can build it. You can become it. You can transform from someone who struggles to learn into someone who learns effortlessly, rapidly, continuously. Not because you changed who you are, but because you changed how you operate. You went from biology to system to identity. You built the architecture. You became the engineer of your own evolution. This is long-term mastery, not a sprint, not a burst of motivation that fades, but a sustainable system that produces continuous growth for as long as you maintain it. You stack skills and compound neural reuse. You frame your identity around learning and reallocate resources. You structure information as narrative and strengthen recall. You abstract principles and accelerate future learning. You maintain long-term vision and stabilize dopamine. You fight habituation with novelty. You build ecosystems, not hacks. You protect your learner identity. You compress across domains. You engineer the system. And with all of this in place, you don't just learn fast once. You learn fast forever. You've become the kind of person who keeps getting better at getting better, who accelerates when others plateau, who sees learning not as a challenge but as a natural expression of who you are. You've gone from consumer to constructor, from passive to active, from hopping to engineering. This is mastery, not of a skill, of learning itself. And now it's yours.